my style is that I really want kids to know that they're accountable for what they do.
Yeah.
I want them to understand that they have freedom, but with that freedom comes responsibility.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to Shifting Our Schools, episode 81. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing in your favorite podcast player. And if you haven't yet, if you're just listening to this on the web, I would highly recommend that you grab your phone and open up whatever podcasting app you would like and look for Shifting Our Schools and add us for your weekly feed, because we are coming with some great conversations here at the end of the year as teachers are reflecting on a year-long progress. And more about that in just a second. Yesterday was one of my favorite geek out moments of the year happened. That is the Google Developers Conference. My wife knows that you do not disturb me during the Google I/O, otherwise known as the Google Developer Conference, and Apple WWDC, which is their developer conference in May. Both of these are held in May. They are two incredible conferences. And both of these conferences, what I love is these are two of the technology giants of our time. And it's at these conferences that you can really see the vision of companies. Where are they going? Where are they focusing? What does this mean for us as consumers? And it's incredible what these companies are doing. It's incredible their vision of what the future could look like. And there are so many enhancements coming to Google Search that are amazing. They are now allowing, this is just, as this is a podcast, one of the things that they announced is in your search results coming shortly, when you do a search on Google, that there will not only be podcast in your search results, but it will actually take you into the podcast to the exact section that is talking about whatever you're searching about. So for example, if you're doing a search for, say, project-based learning, and we talk about project-based learning somewhere in an episode, that episode could show up in your search results. And you don't have to listen to the whole episode. It'll actually bring you into the part that talks about project-based learning. Just think about the human language database that has to be running in the background for something like that. It's mind-blowing to think about what is happening on the internet today. And these companies are so forward-thinking. It's just incredible. I highly recommend you can go back. It's live streamed on YouTube, so you can go back and actually see it on YouTube. I really think you should sit down and watch those episodes. If you're in the tech business, if you're a tech coach, it's just incredible. You get to learn so much about these companies. And the same thing will be happening with Apple here in a couple of weeks and where they're headed. So just an incredible time to sit down and see where these companies are going. So that was a great moment for me again yesterday as I take every May and watch these conferences. And it really shows you the vision of where technology is leading us in humanity. Also, just a reminder that I'm now filling up my calendar for August keynote dates to open the school year. If you think my talk this year titled Respecting Students and Their Culture would be relevant for your school, district, or staff, please do reach out to me. If you want to hear some of what that keynote offers, you can go back and listen to episodes 63, 64, 74, and 75. There are all pieces within those different episodes of what this year's keynote will look like. My dates do fill up fast, so they do come on a first contact basis. So please reach out if you think that would be a good fit. Now, this week, I'm so excited to have Gunner, an English teacher from Enumclaw High School, to be the first to complete his exit conversation with me. I've been working with the Enumclaw School District for 4 years now. It has been a fantastic partnership as they've rolled out their one-to-one program starting 4 years ago. What I love is, as you know, it's not about the device, it's about the learning. Well, this year, I spent the entire school year in a blended learning environment with 16 teachers from 2 middle schools and Enumclaw High School. We spent 3 days in face-to-face learning together, and the teachers had 3 7-week online learning modules they were working through. They had to blog, and they had to vlog. They had to upload YouTube videos. They'd use Flipgrid. Their experience that had to experience the kind of categorize or reflect on their experience along the way. And just to torture them a little bit more, I am making them have exit conversations so that you get to hear their amazing stories and ideas coming from this year of what the school leaders called, and I love this, it's quote, being unleashed, unquote. to try something new, different, and experiment with learning. Chris Beals and I have been trying to capture our work together in a case study that you can find at my website, and I'll link to it here in the show notes, where you can learn more about what that partnership has looked like and morphed into over the years. But from now, it's all about Gunner as he talks about his classroom, his approach to learning, and what he learned from this massive project he took on in his classroom this year. Enjoy this great conversation, and on with the show. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. I'm here with Gunner from Enumclaw School District. Good evening, Gunner.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We're just here doing some exit interviews with a cadre that I've been working with for this past year. And so Gunner's here with us to just talk about his classroom and the way that he's using technology with the students and some of the projects that he's working on. So as we get started, Gunner, will you please introduce yourself? Where did you come from? How'd you get into teaching? What drove you to this crazy profession?
Actually, I always wanted to be a teacher. I think it's one of those people that knew very early that's what I wanted to do, from middle school, grade school. And then I was that nerdy kid who was always reading ahead in all the literature books in my English classes. They give you like the book that had 50 short stories and poems, all this kind of stuff. And I would just kind of ignore the teacher and just read and read and read. And so it was always something that I always wanted to do. I got sidetracked a little bit. After college, I bounced around for a few years. I was coaching track and field at the collegiate level. And
cool.
Basically, I tried to take a shortcut. Even the grad assistant thing and trying to get school paid for it, it turned into a long cut. And then about 6 years into that, I kind of realized I needed to refocus again. But it was good because coaching gave me a little bit of experience in terms of working with students and a different methodology of teaching. The teaching and coaching are very similar in a lot of things you do in the way you have to communicate and making plans and working with students, and so it was good. And so this is my 6th year at Enumclaw, and teach English and part-time history whenever they kind of need me to jump in on that. And so
cool. Is Enumclaw the only school district you worked at, or did you work at other places too?
Yeah. So what happened was I got in. There was a teacher who was kind of taking leave. She'd gotten pregnant. She wanted to go part-time, and so I kind of had a part-time position. And then after she left, I kind of took over for her on a full-time position. And I think fortunately, it was just a spot that nobody else wanted to take a half-time position. But it was good because it was a really smooth transition, because most teachers get thrown in, with 6 periods or 5 periods and, a couple different preps. I had 1 prep, 3 periods. So that first year was a lot smoother for me to transition into the teaching world than it was if I'd been thrown right in.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate. And so, yeah, I've been there my whole career, which is
cool.
Short.
Cool. So. Well, describe your classroom a little bit. Like, what's kind of your style and how do you like to kind of manage learning in your classroom?
I think my style is that I really want kids to know that they're accountable for what they do.
Yeah.
I want them to understand that they have freedom, but with that freedom comes responsibility, and so when it comes to assignments and tasks and things that I do, a lot of it is structured because I've learned how to be more structured. I'm a kind of abstract random learner, and I realize I'm an abstract random teacher. And so I've had to learn to be more structured in what I do, but I definitely encourage kids to go beyond that. And kind of allow them to have that freedom, but understanding that they can take risks, but with those risks come either great rewards or potential disaster. And so trying to get them to understand that the disasters aren't the end of the world. It's just a learning process that you're going to. So I try to think that in my classroom, I try to promote creative thinking. I try to promote them going outside of just the ABC, check the box off kind of teaching style.
Yeah.
And then what I like about literature is anything falls under my umbrella. And what I tell my kids is if it involves a word or something spoken, I can throw it in there. So I also incorporate a lot of things that I think are important, like we do a Metalog Monday where it's all about thinking about the way they think and neuroscience and like the chemistry of the brain and learning styles. And then on Fridays it's Free Advice Friday, where I just spout off about what, you know, but getting to realize that English is, in my opinion, there's a structural part of it, there's the grammar, the essays, but then there's the humanities parts of it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get so caught up on the structural part that we miss the stories and the ideologies that we want to incorporate in them. So.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Talk a little bit. You've been in a one-to-one classroom now for 3 years. Is this year 3 or year 3 or year 4 for you?
Yeah,
something like that. Talk a little bit about what that has meant for you as a teacher. How has that changed your teaching style, or what is it that how has that helped or changed your teaching style going one-to-one?
I don't know if there's been a lot of drastic changes. I think that there's still a lot of core fundamentals that you have that are, you know, and kind of what I say is, if you give me a chalkboard and whatever, I can teach my class, but it definitely adds an element of, I think, speed that you didn't have before, of accessibility that you didn't have before, and a level of distraction that you didn't have before. So it's balancing a lot of different changes. And I think that for students, it's good because the use of technology is becoming such a predominant part of their lives and all our lives. And so, you know, things like cell phone use in the classroom, things like, you know, how to responsibly use research and what kind of sources to use. It's all things that I think are going to become even more relevant for them in the future, because that's the world they're growing up in.
Yeah,
you know, it's definitely shifted the idea of, you know, the rote memorization, because, you know, I heard someone say, they were talking about how when they were kids and they were in students, you know, the teachers would yell at them and say, you know, you're not going to carry a calculator with you, you know, every day. And like, yeah, we are. Yeah,
we are.
and an encyclopedia and everything else. Everything we need, you know. And so, but that it's interesting, because one thing that I've also noticed is the need for information. It has become so, how would I say that? They've become so reliant on someone else providing the information or the content for them. They've become so reliant on being able to say, what is the answer? Well, I'll look it up. Yeah. And so right now we're working on this iSearch paper, and what I told them is they come up with a central question, but their goal is not to find someone else's answer to the question. Their goal is not to find a source that says, this is the answer to what I want to know. Their job is to come up with their own answer using information that they've found on kind of lower level questions about it. You know, they're researching components of their ideas and then coming up with their own ideas. And I think that the danger that I've seen with a lot of the work that comes out recently is students just want to give you the right answer, whether it's their answer or not. They just want to give you the right answer, and they want to look up the right answer. You know, and so that's changed that a little bit. But other than that,
do you allow cell phones in your classroom?
I do, and I often kind of go back and forth on this. And luckily, I work with juniors, and juniors are kind of approaching that, you know, close to adulthood type age. What I tell my students is, listen, you have 50 minutes with me in this class. If you want to spend your time on your cell phone messing around and doing nothing, that due date's not going to change. Like, I'm not going to alter things for you. Because I think that if you take it from them, they've become so reliant upon it. I mean, it's become such a, you know, it's a, I mean, and when you take it away from them, it's almost, you know, they're just going to glare at you with hatred in their eyes, you know. And so, so what I try to do is I spend a lot of time talking about the effects of cell phone usage. I bring in scientific studies where they talk about how, you know, schools that allow cell phones sometimes usually perform less. Talk about the amount of time they spend on it. I talk about the neuroscience of what's happening in their brain and how they become reliant on this shot of dopamine every time a notification comes up. You know, and basically what I tell them is if you were to boil it all down, your cell phone costs you about, you know, 15% towards your grade. And you're trading, you know, instead of having an A, you have a B minus. And that's the price that you paid for your phone. And for some students, they kind of get that and they understand that and they want to do it. But it's amazing to me how many students say, well, it's worth it. Like if I said, hey, your grade will go up, you know, from a C to an A if you give me your cell phone, they say, well, I'd rather take the C
Take
and
the C, yeah.
and
Not
have the phone.
fascinating.
And so it is, and it's a phenomenon that, like I said, I believe that for this generation and even future generations,
Yeah.
the cell phone usage is going to be one of the major problems that they're going to have to solve for themselves in the real world, and how they use it and how it shifts the way they communicate, the way they interact with one another. And all the reports about mental health and the spikes and things like depression and suicide rates among teens, I'm not saying it's all directly tied to it, but it definitely has a contributing factor that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
But I would rather them make that decision for themselves than have me take it from them.
And to your point, when you're talking juniors and seniors in high school, I mean, how much can you, like you're doing, you bring them the evidence, you show them the impact that it's having.
Yeah.
But at some point, this generation is going to have to step up and say, we need to do something about this, or how are we going to, and I think, cell phone companies, I think, are getting better about, putting wellness apps on the phone that show how many times you've been locked and what your notifications are. And I mean, I think the problem around that right now is there's not really a guideline to say, if you look at your phone 200 times a day, that's too much.
Yeah.
Like nobody says, or if you get over 5,000 notifications, and it, like, what is the standard? Like the average person should get 100 notifications a day and unlock their phone 55 times. I don't know, but I think that becomes the issue because it's such a new world. We don't know when does use become too much use?
Yeah. When is it an addiction?
Yeah, exactly.
But
I think we're struggling with that.
What I think is also hard about that conversation is that, when you look at them neurologically in terms of brain development, they don't have the executive function and they don't have the impulse control. And there is a part of me that says an adult needs to be that. An adult needs to be the one who manage that. But the truth is it's hard. It's they're sneaky and they're constant. I mean, it's like holding back, the tide with your hand. You just can't do it because every day it's a new challenge, and so you try to establish routines, but it's really easy to just fall into complacency because it's so prevalent, every single day.
Do you allow earbuds in your classroom?
What I try to tell them is my policy is this: is if I'm talking, give me your attention. But even that's hard because, like I said, if I'm looking on the right side of the classroom, someone on the left is doing that, and also now you're getting into, the wireless earbuds.
Yeah,
where
earbuds.
A kid will just pop up his hood or pull his hair down or his hair down. You're just like, so it's a challenge, and there's all these things that we look at and say, oh man, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a reality. It's something that's going to become so integral to everything they do that you're going to have to find a way to address it.
Yeah, I love that.
Not the traditional takeaway from them.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we're in challenging times, and I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the right answer is.
Right.
And it's hard. I think your approach is just constantly having conversations with them and trying to say, do you realize this? Do you understand what is happening to the brain? Do you know how many times you check your phone during a class period or during the day? Or, the more we can just be aware of it, helps us to make some of those.
Well, and I think what the victory is when you do have that kid that makes that choice. But what I don't think we sometimes accept is how hard that choice is to make on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's really easy for them to do it for 2-3 days, maybe a week, but it slips back into that because the truth is you're talking about the 45 to 50 minutes that you have with me, and then boom, it's right back out as soon as they walk out the door, and I think about, we just did our standardized testing, and one of the policies is you need to put your cell phone away and you can't have it.
Yeah.
And you tell them that and you say, hey, put your phone in your bag. And still halfway through the test, you'll see a kid, pull it out of the pocket, kind of look down. You're like, dude, like I told you, oh, I didn't know. No, you did know. Like you just chose, this thing. And so it's a challenge because it's a major influence in every aspect of their life anymore. So
let's talk a little bit about the project that you've kind of been embarking on this year. I know it's been a hit and miss kind of thing. I think you and Allison and Steve did, you went for it, which I think is awesome. And so maybe just kind of explain, okay, what was the project? What was like the utopia of perfect what this was going to be, and where did this project end up?
So what it was we were talking about trying to have a cross content experience for students, combining a couple classes and come up with a project-based learning. And so what we came up with was it's a history class, it's an English class, and then an anatomy physiology class. So we were just kind of like, well, we're just going to make it work.
Yeah.
So what we came up with was this idea that we were going to ask them a big question. The big question we were going to ask is how did we get here? And the principle being is trying to look at it from this idea of either as a cultural thing or a national thing or a world or political or whatever. And they were going to create a video. And they were talking about, okay, what do we need to give them? And I was very adamant. I was on one side of this project in terms of it being open-ended, no guidelines, no structure, let them go. And it was constantly being tapered by more reasonable kind of conversations from Steve and Allison. And so Steve is very more A-type than I am. And so what we finally came up with is we're going to make the rubric. The rubric is going to be impress me, like make something cool, like do something cool, And so the hope is that these kids would take this kind of open-ended project and make something that they were passionate about and they were interested in and tell this kind of complex story. And that's not the way it went for a couple different reasons. I think there was a small portion of the students that got into it and took it and ran, and came up with some very cool things. For the most part, students needed some structure, and that's kind of what we realized is you can't just give them freedom, like 100% freedom, not because they don't want it, but because they don't know what to do with it. And it's bordering that idea of when are we teaching and when are we facilitating?
Right.
And the realization is there are times when we need to teach. Like we need to teach them how to do whatever it is that we're doing and then facilitate their use of it as they take it in another direction or they take it a step further. For some students, we knew this was going to happen, that some students just more or less sat there for days, we're happy to just not have teachers having them, because we kind of made it a point to say we're not going to go around and tap on shoulders and force them into it. We wanted it to be a choice. We wanted it to be something that they chose to. But I've learned that a lot of teenagers are just happy to just sit there, like they're just that drive for something is not always common. And so trying to balance that idea of structure and open-ended projects. And what was interesting about the whole thing is we said we don't want it to be graded, because we didn't want students to focus on the grade as a motivator. And that backfired horribly on us, because what we found is that's what they've been ingrained with for so long, that is their motivating factor. And what was interesting is we did a survey and we asked the students, what motivates you, to learn, what motivates you to participate? And they all said grades. Okay, awesome. Do you want us to grade this project? No. Okay. So the number one thing that motivates you is the thing that you don't actually want us to do. It put us in this weird kind of paradox, because now we have to say, okay, either we keep that kind of current process of the carrot being a grade, where they so focus on the grade that they don't think about the learning, or we go through this very, very painful process that's going to be messy and unknown, not just to them, but to us as well. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think I just love it. No, I think it's fantastic, because it's really difficult to do things like that. And I think you're right. There's a fine balance between how much structure you give kids and the openness that you have to allow. And that becomes it's a fine dance. What percentage of kids actually completed the project, or
what I would say is there maybe 10 or 15% that kind of
And are
with
these
it.
juniors? These were juniors?
Yeah. And then there's a whole bunch of them in the middle ground that were trying but just couldn't quite figure it or wrap their head around it. And then so it's the bell curve. Like it was your very, very typical bell curve. Like most students were just kind of like, well, can you give us a little help, or can you do this? And we kind of have an idea and we'll work at it, but they weren't taking it like the way we wanted it to. And then there's the group on the other side that were just kind of non-participants, you know. And so what I found is that it's not even finding what's the proper level of structure and what's the proper level of facilitating some sort of opportunity for them to explore different ideas. It's realizing that in a class of 30 students, what you really need to do is say, here is the structure that you can follow, but please, please, please feel free to go other directions with it.
Yeah.
So they can fall back on the structure. They can fall back on the different strategies and tools that you give them.
Right.
And there's a check box they can follow. And so it's kind of like, our idea was, let's build the plane while it's in the air.
Yeah.
And really what we've learned is you need to build it on the ground and then let them take it and then land it occasionally for adjustments, because
I like that.
It's just not gonna work. And so in a classroom of 30 students, what we're kind of tooling with is the idea that you have an option where you say, this is the standard option.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to do this, and you're going to create this product.
Yeah.
If you want to take it outside of that, we will help you. But if you get scared, you can come back or if you get lost, or if you're unsure, then connect to this. Because there are a lot of students that are very much those A-type students that just want to say, just give me the steps.
Yeah.
And I want to produce the IKEA furniture. Just dun, 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 and I have it, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And there's value in that, and I think that there's opportunities for students like that. And sometimes we think everybody has to be the innovator. Well, I think there's opportunities for all sorts of learning styles and opportunities in the classroom. And so how do you capitalize on that? I don't know. It's hard. It's difficult.
And was this an individual project, or were the kids allowed to make
They were allowed to work in groups, which once again may have been a mistake.
Yeah.
But, you know, they just kind of paired up with their friends, and some took it and some didn't, you know, and so once again, it's hard figuring out what's the best way to do this, you know. What's the best way to pair groups, what's the best way to make sure you have strong students working in leadership positions, what's the way to have students that maybe want to facilitate a certain role, fill that role, and how do you balance that out? It's incredibly difficult. And so the framework, I think, is the thing that you need to build, and then you let them clothe it in whatever you know suits their fancy.
Do you think you guys will try this again?
I think we'll try something similar, but we definitely learned a lot of things. One of the things we learned is that time is something that needs to be considered.
Yeah.
Because we introduced it, I think, in November, and said, oh, we're going to work on this till the end of the year. Well, most of them just checked out right there because it was like, oh, well, I've got 6 months. I'm you know, and part of it's just that teenage brain, like 2 weeks from now is not
forever.
Not a real thing. Yeah. So and then we're talking about something. So if we would do it differently, what I think we would do is we would do it in a series of, we're going to do these steps, and then we're going to go back and let you do these steps in the way that you want to take them. But we have to show you the steps first, because you need to know how to create whatever it is you're creating. You know, once again, you need to teach them before you can facilitate whatever it is they want to do. And having the time thing would be a big change for us, because it's just not relevant if it's not right now. You know, so.
That's so true. You know, I mean, it's part of the world we're in. And I love that idea. 2 weeks is a long time for a teenager. Like, that's forever. Timing, you have to think of those timing things. So awesome. Well, thank you for spending a half hour with me here and just talking through stuff. I really appreciate it. So many great takeaways for people that are listening, just around, you know, how you structure these things, and you know, I really appreciate you guys giving it a go. I mean, if nothing else, you know, we need to be taking risks like this in our classroom, because that's where we learn what works, what doesn't, what adjustments need to be made. You know, what do we take away from that, and then go at it again. I mean, that's why they call it the teaching practice. So I appreciate it. I will make sure that there is a link to your blog in the show notes, so everybody can stop by and your thoughts.
read the rants. Yeah.
Read the rants. Gunner's got some great rants on his blog. So feel free you guys can head over there and get in touch with Gunner. And then I'll also put any other links that you want there for people.
Yeah, sure. Awesome.
So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.